I would like to introduce Jim. Jim is a managing partner with CSO Insights, and they are, if you're not familiar with them, a research firm that specializes in benchmarking how companies are leveraging people, process, and technology to optimize the way they market to, sell to, and service their customers. He has over 29 years of sales and marketing experience. Wow. It's a lot of experience, Jim.
It's a lot of years.
He began his career with IBM and Sterling Software, and then he went on to launch 2 successful software companies. He's a contributing editor for CRM Magazine, CRM Guru, SoftwareMag.com. Man, you're a busy guy. And a Harvard Business Review, and is the author of several sales and marketing books. So, without further ado, let me turn it over to Jim.
Thank you, Tracy. Again, thanks for taking the time to come here today. Maybe let me set expectations a little bit more. I get introduced a lot of different ways, and I was over in Norway, and they were introducing me as, like, the Ubermeister of sales effectiveness, and I didn't know if that was a good thing or a bad thing. But if you remember, back in medieval Europe, they used to have minstrels, and they would go from town to town, and they would learn about the stories in one town, and they would turn them into songs, and they would sing about them in the next town, and that was called entertainment. And today it's called benchmarking. And that's really what CSO Insights is. We go and we just do benchmarking. So we go into companies, we don't do consulting, we don't do training, we don't implement CRM. We go in and say, what are the challenges facing your teams? Why do those problems exist? And then more importantly, what are you doing about it? So I want to start off today by just sharing with you what's going on in the world of sales and marketing from your peer perspectives. We do an annual study each year. We're just launching it right now, where we take a look at 3,000 companies worldwide. We go out and we track 100+ different metrics, so we really appreciate the fact that year after year companies give us this data because it takes some time for them to get it. But we try to say, how is the world of sales changing? And it's interesting, if there was ever a time when sales and marketing were easy, now is not it. I was just down at a sales symposium at Baylor University. Baylor brought together 52 universities that have at least a sales center as part of their business school, which I think is pretty exciting. There are 6 universities now where you can get a bachelor's degree in sales. So we're looking at this whole thing, and I said, why all the interest now at the academic level? And he says, because business is coming to us and saying, what can we do about it? And I said, well, what are you finding? And this one guy shared with me this study where he says, we went in and we did this study about using magnetic resonance imaging, MRI tests, to go in and be able to track somebody's brain waves to decide are they a good listener or not. And the practical value of that would be, because you can't require that as part of the hiring process, can you get in this tube? We need to do an MRI test. So maybe some of the stuff coming out is not useful, but your peers are out there solving real problems. And that's really what I want to talk a little bit about today is as we're trying to maximize Q4 and as we're looking out for 2011, we've got the first 700 responses back already to our survey that we do at the end of every year, and 90% of the companies are planning on raising quotas again next year. So it's not only how do we end this year well, how do we plan for next year? And if you can raise quotas, that's always fine. I mean, I co-founded 3 software companies. I ended up running sales and marketing. I know I over-assigned quotas. I raised them every year. But also I'd sit down and say, what's going to be different? Because otherwise I feel like I'm a coach of a high jump team. And half my guys can't clear 6 feet, and I'm raising the bar to 6'3". All things being equal, what's going to happen? Not going to be good. So let's talk a little bit about what's going on there. And again, one of the key things we always take a look at is, as an indicator of performance, how many reps hit their number? And it's a pretty good litmus test. And what we found is this number has been as high over the 16 years we've done this survey. It's been as high as 64%. By the way, it's been as low as 48%. But it's the type of thing that what we saw was as we came out of 2000 and went into 2008, we saw a drop, particularly in Q4, where all of a sudden the stock market hits the skids, people start getting nervous, people start saying, do I really need to spend that money? And so they kind of pull back. And so we walked into 2009 knowing it was going to be a tough economy. And 86% of the companies raised quotas. And to complement that, what they did was they reduced the investment in sales training by 13% per rep. Only 25% of the people who said they were going to buy additional technology to support sales and marketing actually followed through with it that year. We also saw a decrease in headcount available. So we ended up seeing that the average sales manager went from managing 5.2 people each to 6.2 people each. So I had less of a manager's time. And what did we do at the end of the year? We saw the biggest drop in the history of our study in terms of sales performance in 1 year. And we were going, well, of course it was going to happen. We didn't do anything to support them. But we said, what really caused that? And the biggest factor down here was win rate. We've tracked this again over years. It's been as high as 54%. It's been as low as 44.8. So we just hit the all-time low this last year. But this is win rate of forecast deals. This is not pipeline. These are deals where somebody said, I want to put this in front of everybody and tell them I'm going to close this deal. And we are down to 44.8%. I will tell you, you get better odds in Vegas today. And this is our forecast. And if we can't count on it, how can the rest of the company count on it? How can manufacturing be deciding what raw supplies to buy? If you're a professional services company, should you be hiring people to be on teams or not? Are you going to get the project or not? So this is not just a sales problem. This is an enterprise problem. So I said that's really the type of thing that we need to be focusing on because we're in an environment right now where we don't have a lot more money to spend. In fact, when we did our lead generation study, we found that 67% of the companies were freezing or reducing their marketing spend until they start to see things improve. So if we're not going to have more deals, how do we go about doing a better job with the deals we do have? So I want to talk a little bit about changing maybe a perspective on how we look at things. There was a book that was written back in, in 1999. It's two Swedish economists who I won't even attempt to pronounce their names. But Funky Business was actually a pretty good book. But in it, they made an observation. They said, you know, we live in a surplus world today where we have a surplus of similar companies that are employing similar people with similar economic or educational backgrounds who are coming up with similar ideas, producing similar things with similar quality and similar pricing. I said, that is not, this is back in 1999, 2000. And I said, yeah, that was pessimistic back then. But think about it, what's going on in the world of what you sell. When I started selling for IBM back in 1976, we had the 370 architecture for our mainframes. It was designed to last 7 years. So I had to know the 370 architecture. I had to know one operating system, OS. I needed to know one programming language, COBOL, and I needed to know one online processing message, CICS. And I thought, I've got to know 4 whole things? How could I, and I got to know it for 7 years? How could I do that? You know, my brother-in-law is still with IBM today. You know, the lifespan of technology is now down from 7 years to maybe 7 months. If you talk about something like your cell phone, it's probably 7 weeks. In fact, in some of the cell phones, it's 7 days, because as soon as I bought my cell phone, I saw the one I wanted the next day. So the whole issue becomes what you have is not a sustainable competitive advantage anymore. Product life cycles have collapsed. And so if you sit there and look at that from just the product point of view, you may buy into this. And you may go, geez, we're in trouble. But here's the thing. This is all assuming about focusing on what you sell. What about how you sell? So I want to talk a little bit about, we've gone in and started taking a look at the data on the 3,000 companies we have, and we're starting to see that, geez, there are things that you could do. So if what you sell is no longer the advantage, what can you do to find more, win more, and keep more? And we really think it is that how you sell. That there's a way of going in and engaging customers and bringing value add to the table, and there's specific things that you can do that increase your chances of closing that deal all the way through the sales cycle. Increase your chances of, first off, generating the right leads, then converting those to opportunities, taking them through into the presentation stage, the proposal stage, and ultimately closing them, and closing them at the right margins, and also increasing wallet share by using that opportunity to cross-sell and upsell. So let's talk about that. One of the things we did for Harvard Business Review a couple of years ago, if you take a look back, if you go onto HBR's website, a couple of years ago, they did a double issue on sales. So it's the July-August issue, which means it's 22 articles as opposed to 11. And the entire issue just says one word on the front, sales. And it's interesting because it was the first time, not only had they never done an issue on sales, they had never written an article on sales in the previous 5 years. A lot about business, a lot about marketing, not about sales. But it really got a lot of buzz because management, senior management, was talking about that. And what we did was an article for them where they said, we want you to take a look at one of the things you guys measure, which is the level of process that a company has implemented. And so we went down and took a look at the companies we had, and we broke it down here based on the bottom part of this matrix. And we said when we take a look at all the companies we have, they really fall into one of 4 categories. First one over here is there's random process. Now, if you're vice president of a random process sales organization that has 100 reps, you have 101 ways of doing things. The way you would like them to do it as the executive and the way each sales rep is going to go ahead and do it on their own. And it doesn't necessarily mean you're unsuccessful, but it sure as heck means you're unpredictable. Because some rep will close a deal in 3 weeks, somebody takes 3 years. Somebody gets list price, somebody gives it away. Somebody never loses to their competitor, somebody never wins against the competitor. And when all these things happen, you have no idea why. Because everybody's doing their own things. And these are the type of companies in this type of environment where there's uncertainty and a lot of controversy going on and people not knowing should I spend money or not. These are the people that have the hardest problem changing and adapting to what's going on in the ecosystem. So we find that these guys then start to get a little bit of religion, and so they say, let's move up to informal process. Now, informal process is if you're here at the mercy of the individual sales rep, now you're at the mercy of the individual sales manager. Because the sales manager becomes the tribal elder. And they bring everyone together. And they say, this is how it has always been, my children. And they impart the wisdom to the tribe. But if you read Margaret Mead's Society of Primitive Cultures, she talks about the tribal wisdom is interesting because sometimes it's based on fact and sometimes it's based on fiction. And sometimes it's been so long since that seminal event, you have no idea why you take that rubber chicken and throw it into the volcano during the full moon. But we always do. And so these are things. These guys are adapting a little bit better than this, but sometimes they're making decisions based on the falsity of tribal wisdom. So then you see them get up into formal process, where now I've got 100 people doing one thing most of the time. Doesn't mean I don't sin from time to time, skip a step in the sales cycle. But if I have 100 people doing one thing and it becomes the wrong thing, the value message doesn't work anymore, a new competitor comes in and my objection handling doesn't work anymore, whatever it is, I can see that and I can react a lot better than informal or random. Problem is I'm reacting. And that's where we found a few companies who get out into dynamic process, where they not only have the process in place, but they're monitoring the heck out of it. And they start seeing good things and bad things. They start saying, geez, we're getting a better margin over in Europe. Wonder what they're doing in Germany than we're doing here in the States. Or, gee, these guys in the Southwest, they're all of a sudden, losing against a competitor. What's going on? And they're able to be proactive. And that's really what we need to be focusing on today. And we were able to show in the Harvard Business Review case study that we did that as you move from left to right, not only do things get more predictable, things get better. Percentage of reps making quota goes up, percentage of plan attainment goes up, win rates go up. By the way, turnover goes down. Reps like working in a predictable world. And if you want to take a look at something that costs you a whole lot of money, it's that whole hidden thing of when Johnny or Sally leaves and they're a rainmaker and I have to replace them with Bill and Betty. Bill and Betty can be steely-eyed killers, but they're going to go through a 14-month ramp-up, for example, in the software industry to get fully productive. So that's a big, huge issue. But here's the other thing that HBR came back and asked us to look at after we published that. We've done this now for 2 years. They said, you also talk about the level of relationship we have with a customer. From we're one of many approved vendors, we made the list, you can buy from us, to we're the preferred supplier, all things being equal, we'll get the deal the vast majority of the time, to we're moving beyond just being a vendor. We're going to help you implement what we sold you. What a great idea. We're a solution consultant. To we're moving up beyond just this project to really thinking about what are the business issues you're dealing with this year, to where we're a strategic contributor, to where we're moving beyond this year and we're really looking out over a long business horizon. We're really a trusted partner. Unfortunately, probably the most overused and under-earned phrase in business today. But we went back through the organizations, and we've done this the last 2 years, and we've taken a look at all the companies in our database, and we mapped them into this matrix. And here's what we found. First off, there's 2 things that don't happen. If you are totally random, you do not get to trusted partner. An individual rep may be a trusted partner of their clients, but you as a company are not a trusted partner. Conversely, if you've gone out on dynamic process, those guys have at least figured out a way to become the preferred supplier. But we went back and took a look at everybody else, and we said, are there differences between where you are in the matrix? And we really found 3 specific differences. All the guys in red perform about the same. All the guys in yellow perform about the same. All the guys in green perform about the same. Plus or minus a couple of percent. It's very interesting. We've done this now for 3 years, and it really hasn't shifted. This has been the one box where 1 year it was green, but the rest of the years it's been yellow. But here's what that difference looks like, and it's huge. Looking at the data from last year when we said, okay, what percentage of reps making quota? If you're at level 1, you got 45% of reps making quota, level 2, 52%, level 3, 60. Well, geez, if I got more of my reps making quota, there's probably a higher likelihood that I, as the VP of sales, will make my number. And we see that holds true, going from 75% to 80 to 84. Well, why? Why are my guys making their number? Because win rates go up. Win rates go up from 42 to 47 to 53. And what we start to see is, as we move from level 1 to level 2, the one thing that happens is we compete more effectively. So our competitive loss rate goes down. But when I go from level 2 to level 3, not only do I see a little bit of improvement in competitive losses yet again, but no decisions go down. I'm able to go in and qualify out people who don't fit, or I'm able to realize, hey, I've got to go in and sell the value of this. Because in today's marketplace, every deal gets scrutinized. So there's some key benefits on this thing. And people always talk to me about, what's the cost of optimizing marketing? What's the cost of optimizing sales? I can tell you, here's the cost of not doing it. If you're not doing these things, you have the cost of doing nothing. And the cost of doing nothing is huge. The real interesting thing was we had a big drop last year in 2009 in sales performance. Yet, if you had made a commitment at the beginning of 2009 to go from level 1 to level 2, you could have held even with your 2008 numbers. Conversely, if you had made a decision at the beginning of last year to go from level 2 to level 3, you could have held even with your 2008 numbers. Even in a tough economy, you could have turned how you sell into an edge. So one of the things that, when I look on that, this is really where people are looking to, how do we get back to those higher win rates? And part of it will be when the economy finally turns around, no decisions will start to decrease because VPs of finance will start to say, okay, checks are coming in, I'm willing to sign checks out. But when's that going to happen? And that's the real issue today. We're just not hearing a whole lot of feedback on when is the economy going to turn around. And when we took a look at the 2002 through 2004 data, stock market is a leading indicator of improvement. Sales is a lagging indicator. You've got to see the economy turn around before you feel comfortable writing bigger checks. So let's just take a look at around this whole issue of find more, win more, keep more, which is one of the things that we're going to be preaching for next year, is that there's some specific things you can do. There's things that make a difference. So around the whole thing, we went back and took a look at high-performance sales teams and marketing teams as related to, for the companies who find more, what does that look like? And there are three things that we really found that were unique to those class of companies. The first one, which is an interesting and easy thing for you guys to do, well, maybe not interesting, it's a quick thing for you to do, is that these companies take the time to define what we call their perfect prospect profile. In today's world, I don't need to be all things to all people, and in fact, I cannot be all things to all people. But do I need to be? Or can I be all things to all important people? Jim Parakis, who ended up taking over a company called IMRS Software, which became Hyperion, which then got gobbled up, I believe, by Oracle down the road. Jim had a wonderful thing where he created this concept called the perfect prospect profile, where he went down to his sales and marketing teams, and he says, look, we don't have the budget to go out and let everybody know who we are. So show me the attributes of somebody who, when we find one of these people, we will win the business 85% of the time. And so he got people together, and he said, they were selling analytical processing software at that point in time. And he says, well, it could be used by the CEO and the CFO and the CMO and the CIO and the VP of manufacturing, the VP of support, whatever. But in reality, our core competency is talking to CFOs. And he says, the real problem we're really good at is talking to them about budget consolidation. And it's really great if they got budget consolidation in multiple currencies and they have a weak IT organization and the underlying database structure is Oracle and boom, boom, boom. And they got this profile. It says if we find somebody who looks like this, we can have a really high win rate. That becomes a huge benefit to marketing. Because I don't have to have a message for everybody. I can target my messages to CFO Magazine. I can target case studies to budget consolidation. I can go out and find out where are all the companies who have Oracle as the underlying database structure. And because of the fact that now marketing was able to get and say we can invest our money, so as opposed to spending a penny on 1 million people, let's go spend $1,000 on 1,000 people. And so it really had a huge impact on them going in finding the right folks. But after you find them, there's two things that need to be going on there. And again, the second attributes of finding where we're seeing is companies that are starting to invest in what I call sales intelligence that's used by both marketing and salespeople. These are things like trigger event software. Trigger events, if you haven't heard the term before, is coming up, where all of a sudden now there's a ton of information available via the web. Our customers use it all the time to find out about us. Trigger events is for you to use it about them. So, for example, you can set up a trigger event. Let's say that you're a company and you sell computer equipment. This is one of our clients that we took a look at. They're a manufacturing firm, sell office computers. What they've done is they've written a trigger that says anytime on the internet you see a city issuing a building permit to a business that's part of our database, I want you to notify the rep. So, for example, Wells Fargo Bank gets a building permit to build 5 branches in Colorado. It sends a message to the rep going, there's some branches going to be built. We're already doing business with Wells Fargo. Why don't you find out who's going to be the manager of these branches, because there's an opportunity somewhere down the road as soon as the bricks and mortar get done where we could sell them equipment. That's a buying sign. And so it's utilizing the power of trigger events to say what's going on the internet. Let's say you're selling sales training. Wouldn't it be nice to know if a VP of sales changes within a company? Yeah, maybe, but what if the VP of sales was there and they really had good revenues versus bad revenues? So you think, okay, this guy isn't being brought around to turn around, probably not going to spend money. So you want to do an analysis of the balance sheet in addition to finding there's a personnel change. Those things are now available in products like iSell, Zoom Info, Inside View. It's a base capability of some of these types of things to start to identify these things for you. But then the thing becomes, how do you go after those people once you find them? That's really where the whole issue of lead generation management software comes into place. And this is not managing your lead campaigns anymore using Excel or using the real base capabilities in a Salesforce.com or an Oracle. This is about using a real thing that says, look, let's go execute the campaign. Let's go track it. Did somebody open the email? Did they forward it on to somebody else? Doing some things that give us lead scoring. Lead scoring has a huge impact on the quality and follow-up of leads. But also the thing with doing lead scoring is you find people who have fit the profile you want, that you defined up here, and they've got everything except for one thing. They don't have time. And so down here under these lead management systems, one of the things we found is the people who do lead nurturing, who go and say, okay, this person doesn't have time today, but let's stay top of mind. So let's every 3 weeks send them out something. Let's go and start to stay with them and just send them case studies, those types of things. But all of a sudden, when they start to show buying activity, because they go and watch the video that you sent them a couple weeks ago, they go back to the portal that you sent up for them, they go to the landing pages, all of a sudden you see 7 or 8 other people from that company based on IP addresses using, those are the times to re-engage that client. So there's specific things that you can do that say, look, let's go take the dollars we have for marketing, and if we don't have a lot more to spend, let's just spend them more wisely. If we can go target people, I can spend more money down here on other types of things. But those are the things, and as we saw within our lead generation study that we did of 600 companies, these are the guys that have not more leads, but a higher conversion of leads to opportunities into ultimate sales. So it's the type of thing of spending your money a little bit differently. But then the thing becomes, okay, I've generated a lead, I've got it, I put it in the hands of sales reps. Again, what are the attributes around, I think I skipped one. No. What are the things about really going in and actually executing on that? And this gets back to most sales and sales rep and sales management effectiveness. To where I can sit there and say, what are the attributes of those companies? And again, we found 3 things common to high-performance sales teams. By high-performing, by the way, I mean companies that have at least 60% of the reps making quota and had at least a 60% win rate. So these are guys who are even on the upper side of the charts that I showed you before. And what we found is 3 things. These are companies who can articulate not only their sales process and their sales cycle, they can articulate the customer's buying process and the buy cycle. Is that they can go back through and say, this is how people make decisions. These are the people that are going to be assigned to the project team. Here are the marching orders they're going to be giving. Here are the people we anticipate them looking at. Here's how they're going to have to cost justify this. They actually go down and do this. And you think, well, how do you do that? One of the things that we found was that ADP, for example, does a thing where they're working with Brigham Young University, some professors there, and they sit there and say, here's 100 deals that we forecast to close last quarter. That quarter's in the bank. Why don't you go call these guys and find out what they think? And so they do interviews. And they say, tell us about the buy cycle. Who did you take a look at? What did you think about the company? What did you think about the products? What did you think about the people? What were the variables that did this? They do a buy cycle analysis. And out of this, they get a ton of insights into, oh, I get it. This is how we need to change our sales cycle to match the buy cycle. Because the buy cycle is the important thing. I hate it when I go in and I see sales reps and I go, how's it going? Great. What happened? Well, I made a first call. I did the needs analysis. I sent a follow-up letter. I did a presentation. I sent out a price quote. I sent out a follow-up proposal. I go, great. What happened? It's just not closing. I go, what did the customer do? A rep can do everything in the sales cycle except one thing. They can't sign the order legally. So let's go back to the person who's got to sign the order and say, do we understand the steps you're going through, and are you with me in pace down here? Each step of the cycle, are you there? This gets down to integrating, process where you take the what of selling and the how of selling and you put them together. And I think that's been the real difference. Is, there've been the sales training vendors that came out years ago. They came out with the what of selling. So you went and sat through the what of selling class, and what you were told is, what you need to do is call high. Great, I got it. What you need to do is create a sense of urgency. Super, what a great idea. How about selling value and avoiding discounting? God, where do you come up with this stuff? And, how about, we also go through and differentiate us between the competition. You go, great. And after 3 days, you walk out knowing what to do and absolutely no idea on how. How do I call a CFO versus a CIO versus a CEO? And by the way, how do I do that in the oil and gas industry versus manufacturing versus professional services? And how do I go up against competitor A versus competitor C? Nobody's focusing on the how of selling. That's changing. You're starting to see some of the more advanced sales training companies go, oh, there's this thing called sales messaging. So let's go give you the what. Let's go give you the tools to use. And by the way, let's go again, getting back to dynamic process. Let's go monitor those tools to make sure that people are adhering to them and they're using them. And when this answer to this objection becomes ineffective, let's fix it. When this value proposition isn't closing deals anymore, let's improve it. So let's go through and do that because we live in a fragile ecosystem. And just because it was working yesterday doesn't mean it's working today. But you've got to implement that. If you want to go out, you've got to give them the new how. And you want to do that as soon as possible so they have confidence that you're paying attention to this. But the other part of this came back is really optimizing forecast management. We did our first sales management study this last year. And we went in and said, okay, yeah, we saw a huge drop in sales performance. And yeah, part of it's the economy, and part of it's the rep, but part of it's got to be management. And we said, are we really doing the right job in terms of sales management on supporting our folks? So let me share with you a couple numbers from the study that you're going to be getting from Cloud9 from attending this because they license this thing. Is one of the things we took a look at and said, okay, if management is doing the right job or maybe not doing the right job, the first question we have to ask is, do they have the time to do it? And so we did an analysis across 635 companies of how do first-line managers spend their time. And what you see is 27% of the time is spent actually out selling with reps. So I'm there to help you. 22% roughly is spent coaching and mentoring. 14.7% is spent on pipeline and forecast management. So you add those all together, you get around 65% of their time. 2/3 of their time is available to work with reps on closing deals. Then how come forecast rates are down to 44.8%? Because just because I have the time to do it doesn't mean that I'm effective at doing it. We went and took a look at 10 different attributes of what sales managers do, from being able to detect changes in the pipeline to find out what's going on, to helping the rep develop strategic plans, to assessing opportunities before you commit resources. Am I going to put an SE on a plane and fly him out there to meet with the customer if you haven't gone and met the senior decision maker yet? Don't think so. So these are all things we know we need to do, but the black is companies who sat there and said, we know we need improvement in this area. The blue is the guys who exceed expectations. I will venture something to say. A lot of these guys in the gray are kidding themselves. You're adequate, and you've got a 44.8% win rate of forecast deals. So let's be honest with ourselves. We need improvement in all of these things. So the issue is, how do we do this? And the problem is, what are the tools we give people today? When we took a look and say, how are you managing your forecast, we see about 30% of the companies are using spreadsheets. So I've got shadow accounting, so did I update this or not? And, well, no, but, I'm not using that anymore. I got it in Salesforce. Problem with Salesforce, we use it ourselves. And so I can tell you that I look at our forecast and I see that there's $10 million in the pipeline for the Southwest region for Q4. Great. And we just did the review, beginning of the month. It's now the 20th of October. There's still $10 million in the quota for the Southwest region for the month. Is that a good thing or a bad thing? And the answer is, don't know. Because is it the same 10 million? Did 9 million drop out and was it replaced by another 9 million? By the way, is that 9 million in the earlier stages of the sales cycle? That's the real problem on this thing, is that we need to get the tools. And again, that's the type of thing where people are starting to say, let's either build something or let's buy something, but let's go get something that really gives managers data so they can manage based on metrics, not hunches. So then we get into things of how do we go about keeping more. If we go ahead and we get a customer right now, one of the things we found in our study this last year is we said, what percentage of revenues came from existing versus new customers? And when you get in a tight market, that percentage goes up. Why? Because these guys know you. You've already got a relationship. It's easier to go back and get additional business from them. And again, we found three things that are common to companies that really excel at this. The first one is they do a lot better job of solution problem alignment by going out and saying, we're not just going to sell you something, can we actually deliver on that? So a gentleman named Tom Blondie, he's president of a software company down in Phoenix. One of the things that he did was totally change the compensation strategies at Surf Control as a company. Is reps get paid commission, and they get 2/3 of their commission when they book the order, and 1/3 of their commission when the customer signs off that the products have been implemented to their satisfaction. What's that doing? What it's really doing is it's turning this whole thing around where all of a sudden now I have a vested interest in making sure it works, that I've understood what you're going to do with it, how you're going to deal with it, and I go through and make sure it works on that. I think we've got to do a much better job of tying compensation to make sure we're creating customers that are going to be happy, successful, et cetera. Because if we just pay them based on revenues, you're going to close deals that I guarantee you don't want. And they're going to end up being, especially in this area of the world today, where you say all these things now with Twitter and Facebook and all the ways that your unhappy customer can influence other people, that's going to become a more and more of a huge issue to deal with. The other part that we're seeing out there is, again, the guys who are doing a better job of keeping more are doing a much better job of account penetration. Is once they're into a company, they start, again, going back to, again, using sales intelligence to say, what other names of people can I get in other divisions? Who can this person introduce me to? How can I just find out? I get into GE. Great, I'm into GE Fleet Services. How can I get into GE Railcar? How can I get into GE Capital? You know, how can I get into other things? And really kind of penetrate through these things. You've already got an established beachhead. You've got a success. How do you give sales reps the tools to go back through and say, where are the next people? This gets back to the sales intelligence issue. The last thing we really find is that the guys who are really successful are, again, mining the gold out of what they've done. So they start taking a look at the deals and start saying, what were attributes of deals we won versus we lost versus end up no decision? Interesting thing was there's a company that's a medical products company in Minneapolis. They did an analysis, and when purchasing was the primary decision maker, their win rate was about 20%. When nursing was involved in the final decision, their win rate was closer to 70%. Same product. Well, why? Purchasing hates these guys. They're the highest price. So in terms of how they're managed, of what's the cost per test, purchasing will come back and say, you know, I want to go with these other guys. They're so much, you know, so much more inexpensive. Nursing, on the other hand, is responsible for administering those tests. And the tests happen to be much more reliable, much easier to administer, much faster feedback. So what do? You go and you start understanding, geez, these are the attributes of when we win. Let's go back and feed that back to marketing. Go find us nursing organizations. Go back to sales management. If you can't get nursing involved early in the sales cycle, walk. It ain't going to happen. So it's learning from all these things. So one of the key things on this thing is, you know, again, we need to change, and there is the money to pay for this. There is absolutely the dollars to pay for this, but what do you do? Where do you all start? What's right for you? And it's interesting because Michael Hammer, when he wrote the book Reengineering the Corporation years ago, talked about the fact, he says, look, reengineering is not about doing everything 5% better. He says it's about doing a couple things in order of magnitude better. And so this is a formula that we stole from Chevron years ago that they invited us to steal. I invite you to steal it. But look, when we're talking about introducing change into marketing or sales, we have the potential of running into R, which is resistance to change. We're asking people to change. Introduce a new marketing methodology, a new sales methodology, a new sales CRM system. That's change. Now, I hate it when people say that people resist change, as that's a basic fact of human nature, because it's not, and I can prove it. Because I see Public Service Clearinghouse on TV knocking on the door. The guy opens up the door and he goes, here's $1 million. That is change. And I've yet to see somebody go, no, take it away. They say, give it to me and get out of my way. We don't mind change. We mind being changed. So here are the 4 things that Chevron said. When we try to introduce anything into our sales and marketing organizations, we make sure we've thought through 4 factors. The P in the formula is pain. What about the way we're doing things today is unacceptable? Not undesirable, not uncomfortable, fundamentally unacceptable. You know, it was unacceptable to HP a couple of years ago that they had 18% of the people calling their 800 number were hanging up before they ever talked to a human being. Because they had one of these wonderful systems we all have. Hi, your call is so important to me that I can't answer it, but press 1 for this, 2 for that. You had to press 8 numbers to get to a human being. 18% of the people were hanging up. And they figured out, okay, that's a pain. We got to do something about that. So what are the pain for your guys? What are the pain for your people in marketing? Do they have, good information on your clients or not? That's a real pain. Go fix it. But the key thing on it is, how do you fix it? A lot of us want to jump from the P, pain, to the V, vision. Here's a vision of what better looks like. And at that point in time, we say, revenue's down. And somebody will come in and say, fire, good. And, fire could be CRM, could be process, could be whatever it is. The problem is you're starting to do what you would never let your doctor do. I coach for Nike. I still work with adult runners. I am way past my prime. But I go to these running camps, and I come back after a week, and I've got tendonitis because I've tried to run with the gazelles. And it doesn't happen. So I come back, and I know what the pain is. My tendonitis is flared up like a big dog. But if I went to a doctor, and he sat there and said, take this white pill, I go, we skipped something. Where was the diagnosis? The C is that. What's causing the pain? What's causing it? Revenues are down. Why? Margins are down. Why? Cross-selling, upselling, down. Why? Go back and do this, and don't assume you know. We worked with a toy company down in L.A. They sat there and said, we got pain. Cross-selling and upselling is down. And I said, okay. And so, what's the plan? And I'm expecting him to tell me about C. Here's what we're going to do to diagnose the pain. He says, nope, we're going to implement a new marketing encyclopedia. I said, that sounds like V. That sounds like vision. He says, yeah, but we already know it. Sales are down. Cross-selling is down. So we just need this new marketing encyclopedia. I said, did anybody ask the reps why cross-selling is down? And they sat there and said, well, because they don't have marketing. So I said, let's just call a couple reps. And literally, we called. Second rep we called, we said, by the way, did you notice cross-selling and upselling is down? He says, yeah. Yeah, I did. He says, you think a marketing encyclopedia would help? He says, no. And I said, then why is cross-selling and upselling down? He says, because you told us not to cross-sell and upsell. And I said, how did we tell you? Did you guys bother to read the compensation plan? He says, you took out the product mix variable. If I go and I make 300% of my quota selling one product, I still go to club. That's much easier for me than having to hit my cross-selling variable. So thanks a lot. But you guys told me to stop doing this. Don't assume we know what the cause is. Take a little bit of time. I'm not talking about doing a Six Sigma-oscopy on the whole thing. But go ask the guys, for God's sake, what's going on? Do a little bit of time. So if you understand the pain and you understand the cause, then you're able to articulate to other people. Go to other vendors. One of the key things that Cisco is doing and ADP is doing and Heartland Payments is doing is they love to talk to their customers about, here's what we're doing in sales and marketing. Why? Because they want you to be successful. Why? Because if you're more successful and you're a Cisco customer, you're going to buy more network, more routers and bridges. If you're ADP and you're more successful, you're going to hire more people. They're going to write more checks. If you're Heartland Payment Systems and you're more successful, you're going to process more credit card payments. Of course I'm going to tell you what we're doing. I want you to be successful. There's a ton of free consulting you can get just by talking to the people you do business with. Do you have a best practice? But also it's talking to the solution providers. Here's what my problem is. How can you help me solve this problem? Then you get into the visions where you're having a real meaningful discussion with whether it's a CRM player or a methodology firm or whatever, because now you're trying to solve a common threat. Now, sometimes the visions are going to be so big that they're going to scare the heck out of you. So this is really where I thought the brilliance was, because I've seen other formulas like this, but the one that Chevron had the F onto it, which is the F is, what are the first steps I can take towards the vision? The vision may sit there and blot out the sun in its complexity and grandeur, because you're looking at a 48-month thing. But if you take a look at some of the best projects, John Williams was Senior Vice President of Sales and Marketing at Storage Tech, took the company from $800 million to $2.2 billion in 4 years and did not add a single sales rep. Same headcount in sales 4 years later as when he started. What changed? He improved productivity. And he did it by identifying 50 things that he could fix and say, let's go pick 3. And let's go knock them off. And then let's go pick 3 more. And let's go pick 3 more. And let's go pick 3 more. And for 4 years, they had incremental improvement. But he could always pay for it. He could always go back to the board and say, there was never any issue after the first couple times with him getting approval to spend money. Because he could go in, here are the 3 problems I'm going to solve. Here's what's going to happen at the end of the day. And he moved on down. So I think the whole thing is break it apart. You don't have to do everything all at once. Go do a couple things. So understand the pain, diagnose the causes, work on the vision, and if it's too big to do all at once, break it apart into first steps. So I've had the easy part. I've kind of painted out, here's what's going on. Here's a process for going and understanding things. But how do you get better? What's the recipe for success? So I'd like to turn it back over to Tracy and just kind of let you hear what's going on with some companies that are implementing different types of approaches to this, because there is a way for us to turn how we sell into a competitive edge, and it's just something we need to find for each of us. So thank you.